Caught on camera in Ghana, the partner of a mother and their 2 children found murdered in southeast London. This picture proves Arthur Simpson Kent flew to West Africa 6 days after they went missing. The family of Syon Blake want to know why.
I want him to face justice, and my brother is angry and my cousins are angry, and it's because of the boys.
Also tonight, 1 year on from Charlie Hebdo, Paris police shoot dead a man with a knife and a fake suicide belt.
Renewed calls for a sugar tax. Cameron hints he may not rule it out.
And over deserts, mountains and the deep blue sea, circling the world in a biplane.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
Good evening. The man wanted over the murders of a former EastEnders actress and their 2 children has been pictured arriving in Ghana 3 days after he was questioned by police about their disappearance. The image obtained by ITV News shows Arthur Simpson Kent in Kotoka Airport in Accra last month.
Today, the sister of Syon Blake, who was found dead along with her 2 sons, called for him to come home and face justice. They revealed Syon had been about to leave her partner before she vanished. Paul Davis reports.
Caught by a security camera as he entered Ghana, first and comprehensive proof that Arthur Simpson Kent, main suspect in this triple murder investigation, has left the UK. 19 days ago, he passed through this airport while his girlfriend, Syon Blake, and their 2 young sons were still officially missing. Today, officers who found the bodies of the actress and her boys at the family home have many questions to ask Simpson Kent.
I've lost my sister and my 2 nephews.
Syon's devastated family also want him brought back to Britain.
So yes, I want him brought back to justice, and he will have to answer to the courts of this land and to God eventually. And, you know, I don't know what's going through his mind, but, you know, that's for him.
Syon Blake and her 2 children were last seen on December the 13th when they visited family in the Waltham Forest area. Police questioned Syon's partner, Arthur Simpson Kent, 3 days later at their home after she was reported missing by family members. He then disappeared. 3 days after that, on the night of the 19th of December, he was seen on airport CCTV entering Ghana. Although the couple's 2 sons, Zachary and Amon, appeared happy and well looked after, families say the relationship between Syon and her husband was troubled and that she had been planning to leave him.
In our opinion, the relationship had already come to an end, but she hadn't quite made that break or that decision to actually leave Arthur. She wanted also not to just throw him out on the street, but give him time maybe to find somewhere else to live.
Suppose I did make a move on you. What would you do?
Syon's family say they're desperately proud of her as an actress, as a woman and as a mother, and can't bear the thought of not seeing her sons grow up.
My brother is angry and my cousins are angry, and it's because of the boys. They're angry about Syon, but the boys have devastated us. We've lost a generation, and I can never replace them.
Today, those boys were remembered with tributes and toys at the gate of what was their home, while the search for their father has switched to another continent.
So, Paul, what have you learnt about this man that the police want to speak to in connection with these 3 murders?
Well, we now know that on December the 18th, that's 2 days after he was questioned here about the disappearance of his family, Arthur Simpson Kent travelled from Glasgow Airport to Amsterdam, and that a day later, using a Ghanaian passport, he travelled on to Ghana. And fresh information too is emerging about life here at Syon Blake's home in Kent. It's been revealed that a family member contacted the children's charity, the NSPCC, on December the 16th, expressing concern about domestic violence here. And that information was passed on to the police and Bexley Council 2 days before Arthur Simpson Kent slipped out of the country.
Paul Davis and Erith, thank you.
A man carrying a butcher's knife and an image of an Islamic State flag has been shot dead as he attacked a police station in Paris. The shooting comes as the city marks the first anniversary of the Charlie Hebdo shootings.
The man who was wearing a fake suicide vest shouted Allahu Akbar, God is greatest, in Arabic before he was killed. From the scene in Paris, our security editor Rohit Kachru reports.
Moments after he entered a police station, his body lay on the ground. A year after Charlie Hebdo, to the day, almost to the minute, police in Paris were again confronting terrorism. Armed officers made the first inspection. Then a bomb disposal robot inched closer. What looked like a suicide vest was in fact a fake. But he had with him a knife, a sheet of paper with an IS flag, and a written claim of responsibility. President Hollande had just been praising the police, remembering the victims of terrorism on a day of memorials. He promised to add 5,000 officers to France's security forces. But hours later, his pledge had extra pertinence as ministers visited the police officers who might have become victims. I wanted to tell them that I was close to them, he said. In a country where the level of alert is extremely high, police and security forces, like the president said, are on the front line. They're displaying great courage, great bravery. This feeling is becoming familiar here. A country already in a 3-month state of emergency and what feels like a perpetual state of high alert. Well, tonight officials here in Paris named the suspect as 20-year-old Salah Ali, who was born in Morocco. He was known to the police force as a petty criminal. He had a conviction for theft, but he wasn't known to the intelligence services as a potential terrorist.
All right, Rohit, thank you very much indeed.
Stock markets around the world fell into the red today after China once again suspended trading after a big slump in share prices. Here, the Chancellor, George Osborne, said such global uncertainty means it will be a mission-critical year for the UK economy. Well, our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Shipp, joins us from Cardiff, where the Chancellor made his speech this afternoon. Chris.
Yes, Mary, two questions, I think, for George Osborne's trip to Cardiff today, with some suddenly dark warnings about the UK economy. Why here? Well, it should be noted it is election year for the Welsh Assembly. Why now? Well, there are some gloomy signs in other economies, and stock markets tumbled today in Asia, in Europe and in the US. So Mr Osborne is either getting his excuses in early or admitting there are some economic levers he cannot control. The wind was blowing strongly across Cardiff Bay this afternoon, but it was the global economic headwinds the Chancellor came here to warn of. As he said, 2016 could mark the start of a decline for the UK economy. Downbeat, this speech certainly was.
I worry about a creeping complacency in the national debate about our economy. A sense that the hard work at home is complete, that we're immune from the risks abroad.
If you are so worried about what you now call 2016 becoming the beginning of the decline, why did you sound such an optimistic note in your autumn statement?
Well, it's true that Britain has grown faster than any other major advanced economy over the last couple of years. But it's not enough to have a plan, you have to deliver it. And that's what 2016 is all about, delivering that plan in the face of this dangerous cocktail of risks from abroad.
So what are the ingredients in the dangerous cocktail of which he spoke? The slowdown in China, where just today the stock market was suspended for a second time in a week. Economic problems in Russia and in Brazil. Falling prices for commodities, especially oil. And instability in the Middle East with tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
For some time we've been warning George Osborne about the problems that will hit us as a result of changes in the global economy. And this is not the time that you should be cutting, particularly investment in our economy.
A short drive down the M4 in Newport, 600 staff make and export office furniture. In fact, 17 lorries were being loaded up for Europe today. But European exports have stagnated, and the man in charge wants George Osborne to do more than just send out warnings.
50% of our products are exported, so if there's risk to our export market, there's risk to UK jobs.
And you're not getting that support from the government?
No, there seems to be a lot of sort of noise and froth about supporting high-tech start-up businesses. There doesn't seem to be much assistance for traditional and established manufacturers such as ourselves.
But this was a New Year pledge from the Chancellor to keep a tight wrap on spending. Chris Ship, ITV News, South Wales.
David Cameron appeared to soften his views on a controversial sugar tax today, saying he is not ruling it out. He had previously appeared to be opposed to the move.
It followed calls for a tax on sugary drinks by Cancer Research UK, which said it would prevent more people becoming overweight and developing the disease. Our political correspondent Emily Morgan has more.
How do you solve a problem like sugar? How do you find a way to tackle Britain's obesity problem? A tax on sugary drinks is one way to help curb our addiction, and today the Prime Minister hinted that could now be considered.
I think we need to look at this in the same way in the past we've looked at the dangers of smoking to health and other health-related issues. So that is my commitment. We need a fully worked-up strategy. We shouldn't be in the business of ruling things out, but obviously putting on extra taxes on things is not something I aim to do. It's something I would rather avoid.
If it sounds like a change in tone, it is. Last year, Downing Street did rule out a blanket sugar tax, but is now suggesting a tax on certain things is still on the cards. A distinction supporters say is important.
Nobody's calling for a tax on all sugar. People are calling for a tax on just sugary drinks to help drive choices to healthier choices.
New evidence suggests a tax could work. One study claims a 40% reduction in sugar in sweet drinks could prevent up to 300,000 cases of diabetes. 1 million people would also avoid obesity over the next 20 years. And analysis of Mexico's tax on sugary drinks found it had led to a 12% cut in sales in just 1 year.
The main reason people get overweight is because they're taking in too many calories and not using them. And a real source of that is sugar. And for school-aged children, a big source of that is sugary drinks. And that's why we think it's important that we take on measures like a sugary drinks tax, which could help reduce their consumption.
The government have obviously made no decision on this yet and are still looking at all the options. But Number 10 insists there is still scope for the drinks industry itself to play a much greater part, something they say they are doing, and a tax isn't the only answer. The long-awaited obesity strategy will lay out precisely what the government plans, but today it looks more and more likely a tax will form part of it. Emily Morgan, ITV News in Westminster.
Now, they're trapped, freezing and starving in a town under siege from Assad's troops in Syria. 35,000 people, including many children, in a desperate state. Today, the regime claimed it may finally allow the UN to deliver aid there. But tonight, as of yet, it hasn't happened. Madaya is a rebel-held town just 15 miles outside the capital Damascus and close to the border with Lebanon. It has been under siege since early July by Syrian forces and Hezbollah fighters. The people there last received supplies in October, and some have reportedly already starved to death. And a warning, there are upsetting images from the start in this report from our international affairs editor, Raghi Omar.
This is the face of the human cost of war in Madaya, where everyone, however vulnerable, have been brought to their knees by a cruel method of war harking back to the Middle Ages: starvation. And today, new footage has emerged showing adults also being starved to death. This young man hasn't eaten for at least 10 days and has been poisoned by eating wild herbs he's had to scavenge. Look at us, he says. Our whole town has not had food for around 3 months. Today, the UN said the Syrian government finally agreed to let food aid trucks into Madaya to reach those who need it most.
We have trucks on standby with food and other assistance ready to go into these towns to help these people who are in a desperate situation. We just need safe access and a guarantee that we can get in there and get to the people who are most in need.
The mountainous town of Madaya is under siege by forces loyal to the Syrian government of President Assad. But at least 2 other towns in northern Idlib province, loyal to the government, face a similar siege by rebel forces. This is Dr. Mohammed Yusuf, one of the few in Madaya. Today he was treating this child who hasn't eaten for a week. He calls on the UN Security Council to intervene immediately, saying 35,000 face death by starvation.
Both sides in this conflict have resorted to besieging towns. Madaya is a terrible situation, but we estimate that there could be in excess of 100,000, maybe up to 200,000 people around the country who are in similar situations to this, or situations like this that are approaching what we've seen.
If and when aid trucks are allowed into Madaya, they'll find a desolate town where the hungry and starving who haven't eaten for days, sometimes weeks, are forced to scavenge and beg. All this as they try to survive war. This is Syria today. Ragioma, ITV News.
David Cameron met his Hungarian counterpart Viktor Orban today and said he's confident that they can reach agreement over EU reforms. Hungary is one of the countries most opposed to Mr Cameron's plans for a curb on migrants' benefits, and he must get them on side if he's to get the changes he so badly wants. Well, our Europe editor James Mates joined the Prime Minister on the latest leg of his European tour, which started in Germany.
Walking very gingerly down a slope that may turn out to be extremely treacherous. On some days, the picture tells the whole story. David Cameron today took his renegotiation tour, first to Bavaria, where he's among friends. His attempts to reform the EU are really quite popular, and yet he is still finding it tough going. A photo op in the region's BMW factory was straightforward enough, but there's no sign that his private talks this morning with Germany's Chancellor Merkel, nor this afternoon with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, have yielded any sort of breakthrough. Orban is deeply hostile to the EU, but like other East European leaders, won't allow benefits to be taken away from his citizens, which makes a 4-year benefit ban a non-starter and compromise inevitable.
Have you today been talking specifically about suggestions such as reducing the 4-year ban to 3 years or less, or about imposing some sort of residency test before EU migrants are able to claim benefits?
I put on the table the 4-year proposal, and that proposal remains on the table, and it won't come off the table unless something equally important is put in its place. I'm open to listening to ideas. I'm not going to give you a running commentary on those ideas, but I'm very clear about the aim that we need to achieve here.
The man beside him insisted Hungarians in the UK are not migrants but EU citizens and not parasites. But he held out hope of a deal.
It's very important those Hungarians who are working well and contribute to the British economy, they should get respect and should not suffer discrimination.
So a warmer reception and better body language, but the central issue still unresolved. How do you restrict benefits for EU migrants without discriminating against them? Work is being done to square that circle, but it's going to have to be very creative. James Mates, ITV News, Budapest.
The chief executive of Marks & Spencer is stepping down after poor Christmas sales, especially in clothing. Mark Bolland will leave in April after a 6-year battle to turn around the fortunes of the big high street store. The company's chairman insisted today that Mr Bolland had not been pushed out.
And 2015 was a record year for new car sales in the UK, with 2.6 million sold. The industry said the 6% rise was due to cheap finance and consumer confidence.
The British public is being asked to donate money to support our Paralympians ahead of this summer's Rio Games. Team GB finished 3rd in the London Paralympics, and the elite athletes are well funded. But grassroots athletes say they are missing out badly. Our sports correspondent Ian Payne reports.
Lauren Steadman is in training for the Rio Paralympics.
This hurts from squats yesterday. Whew.
At 23, she's already competed in 2 games and is now preparing for the first ever triathlon next summer. And to do it, she needs money because...
You've got the cost of your equipment, you've got the cost of training, you've got your food, you've got, it's everything. And, I'm at university as well, so I've got all of those fees to pay as well.
The start vital. She'll be part of a team trying to emulate or better the success of London 2012. When men like Johnny Peacock helped the squad finish third in the medals table. In fact, Paralympic sport has never had it so good. The team's funding for Rio is £72 million. That's a huge increase, 43% more than London 2012, where British athletes won 120 medals. And yet today, the British Paralympic Association launched a campaign to raise even more money by public donation, because they believe they're worth it.
We believe this year is a year where we can really help to make a difference positively on disabled people's lives through sport, through the achievement of our athletes and their inspirational impact.
But if those Paralympians are the haves, meet the grassroots have-nots. Like the London Titans wheelchair basketball team. They get, well, nothing. And they don't think that's fair.
We provide the structure for people, so it's providing a court, for instance. It's not providing all the flashy shirts and the logos. What we do is provide a place for people to train and to come regularly to actually be a part of something that they can spend some time on and have as part of their lives for the whole of their lives, not just every 4 years, every so often.
Slightly parts you've got resistance. So is the funding of disability sport fair? Probably not. The question is, who deserves it more? Ian Payne, ITV News.
And finally, she is almost there. The female pilot who's recreating one of the most daring solo flights ever undertaken is about to complete her epic feat. Tracy Curtis-Taylor is flying an open cockpit biplane from England to Australia.
Yes, she's following the route famously flown by aviator Amy Johnson back in 1930. Well, I saw Tracy off 3 months ago, and this weekend she will finally, all being well, arrive in Sydney. Touchdown in Australia, Tracy Curtis-Taylor and her vintage biplane have made it, just about intact, to the other side of the world.
Fantastic to be in Australia. This is big outback country, and I'm here at Ayers Rock, so it's an absolute thrill, I can tell you.
I flew with Tracy just before she left, a brief taste of aviation from a bygone age. But her journey has not been easy, battling through freezing fog and foul weather in Eastern Europe, then nervously plotting a route around war-torn Syria. Flying instead over neighbouring Jordan, and then on across the vast scorching deserts of Saudi Arabia. She's flown low over some of the great sights of the world, the temples of Myanmar and the emerald green waters of Thailand's Phang Nga Bay, and Scaramanga's lair of James Bond fame. When she lands in Sydney on Saturday, Tracy will have flown more than 13,000 miles in 93 days, travelling through 25 countries. The route she followed was as close as possible to that flown by Amy Johnson in 1930. Aged just 26, Amy's was an altogether more dangerous adventure, with no lights, radio or fuel gauge in her plane.
She blinded her way here in 19 days, crashed several times, right on the brink of physical exhaustion and nervous exhaustion. You know, she was flying up to 10 hours a day. She was then engineering her aeroplane, you know, often fixing it from the crashes. So, you know, just the psychological impact of what she was doing. I haven't got close to reproducing that.
But Tracy's is a stunning feat all the same. Aviation history recreated, and now Sydney awaits. Good luck to her.
Indeed.
Tom Bradby will be here at 10:30.
Nice hat, by the way. And,
Vintage.
for now, have a very good evening.
I'll wear the outfit.
Obviously. Bye-bye.